Hey everyone, Scott Hansen here from NFL Red Zone. I hope you're checking out 1 hour of 5 Yard Rush, one of the best podcasts on NFL football in the UK.
Yo, what's happening, Rush Nation? Welcome to Thursday's show, week 6, week 7. We're here, we're in the twilight zone of my favourite time of the week for fantasy football, around 7:30 p.m. British summertime, we're still BST at the moment. So if you're joining us from east of the world, further into the night, west, behind us in the day, welcome in, welcome all. As you can see, if you're watching, please do come and watch us. We are live across certainly YouTube, Murf, Twitter, or X, as Elon Musk would now have it called. Where is there anywhere else? Twitch?
Facebook.
On Twitch? Facebook?
No,
Twitch?
Facebook.
Okay.
Not Twitch.
Facebook. Excellent. So, yeah, do hit the like and subscribe button. Do come and watch, because sometimes we do some funny stuff that you can't see on the audio versions. Big man, how you doing this week?
I'm good. It's been a long week. Was in Manchester earlier in the week. So yeah, was crazy doing Waiver Wire, the Waiver Wire podcast in a hotel room. It was right next to Old Trafford. So yeah, it's been a strange week. It's always strange when I hit the road and I'm not home as much as I normally am. So, but it's good to be home in the home environment. Good to be here with you, good sir. And it's just good talking strategy. This is my favorite part of the fantasy season, because you have enough data to know who's good and who isn't from a player perspective and a team perspective. If you've had a really bad start, this is kind of like the last point where you can really kind of make actionable change to still make the playoffs. And then if you're doing really well, then you can start to get a little bit excited about the playoffs and start getting into strategic thinking. So I think the next 2 to 3 weeks are where leagues are won and lost. Not exclusively, but I think there's a good percentage of leagues that could be won in the next couple of weeks with the kind of strategic moves that they make in teams. So did a strategy pod that went live literally not even 2 hours ago, about an hour and a half ago. So if you haven't had a chance to listen to that before you're listening to this, that's absolutely fine. But definitely go back and listen to it with a pen and paper or a spreadsheet or something in front of you, or note doc to take some notes, because there's a lot of useful stuff. It's the most requested show I do every year about sort of roster construction and strength of schedule stuff. So yeah, a lot of useful notes. It's half an hour long, so it's worth doing. And I do a more in-depth version on the Patreon. So if you really liked it and want to get into more detail, then join the Patreon, £1 a month, patreon.com/5LRush, and £1 a month. So if you think between now and January, that's £4. It's not even the price of a pint, and you can get podcast content like that will help you win a ship. So definitely sign up to that. And actually, before we start, there is something I do need to say. I haven't put it in the show doc, so it's going to be a bit of a shock to you, Stock. It's just regarding a lot of stuff that's happened online in the community in the last 7 to 10 days or so with regards to charity competitions, and in particular about somebody who used to write for the college side for a short period of time, who then started his own fantasy competition for the Dogs Trust and then reneged on the prize for the winner. Really disappointing that happened. We obviously have no affiliation with this person. We have no affiliation with them for over a year now, I think it is. So I'm not going to trawl the name through the mud. I just want to make it really clear that at the time of him starting the competition, it wasn't necessarily with our endorsement or through our platform that happened, and had no affiliation with us. I feel really sorry for the winner, and I think there is going to be something that will be done in the community to compensate that person who won and was not given the prize, which was 2 tickets to the Titans Ravens game. I know there's more commotion. I know some people are trying to drag the situation out. I'm not going to really dignify too much of a response either side. The only things I'm going to say on this are, one, that person has no affiliation with us and has had no affiliation with us for well over a year. And anything that was done at the time of him doing a charity event had absolutely nothing to do with us and did not come with any co-endorsement or anything like that. So that's the first thing I will say. I probably retweeted it as a show of support, but that's not a necessary sign of endorsement. I want to make that really clear. Second of all, I wrote a post last week saying that if you see these leagues come up, and that's either leagues or charity leagues, and you're not sure on the person who's running it, or you think like, I want to join, but I don't know who these people are, feel free to message me. And I put a list of people in the community which I trust 100%. I've met, I know them, I feel confident in them delivering a charity experience or league, and have absolutely no qualms or issues about how they would run a league or charity league. But you can cite me, you can go to them. There's enough people in the community you can talk to make sure that the league you're joining is legit. If people are asking you to donate money via PayPal or via a bank account, my strongest urging is to not do that. Just because you've got absolutely zero protection. There have been some cases where people have wanted to donate to the FFCC, and I have given them my PayPal details, and then I have paid the money via my account to the charity page, because there were some international issues where money wasn't clearing, but I always wrote their name, not my name, on the donation. So it was very transparent of what was donated. And that's a very rare instance. I think it's happened 3 times in 3 years, that four times in 3 years that's happened. So it not something I ever choose to do often, nor an option I want to take. But I'm not saying that people shouldn't play for money. But if you're going to set up like first of all, leagues run over PayPal where there's revenue collection is actually against PayPal's terms and conditions. So there is just a chance that the money could be completely frozen. So just be a bit careful of that. I think small stakes and friends and family stuff, and it's like one league, I don't think that's going to crop up. And if you know everyone in it, that's absolutely fine. Just be really careful. Same with bank transfers. If you transfer money to somebody and they don't pay out, you've got zero protection. So typically there are sites where you can, the money can be held, League Safe, and there's a couple of others out there that can be used. So just be a bit careful. And if you don't know the people, please get in touch with me. Get in touch with, I wrote a list of like Rich Dynasty Island, get in touch with Tom Strachan, get in touch with guys at the Warrior Bowl, get in touch with Matt Cullen, get in touch with even some of the players like Martin, the Lucky Fantasy guy who plays in a lot of leagues. Get in touch with those sorts of people who can validate who these people are. And if none of us have ever heard of them, then show a bit of caution. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not saying I know everyone, so that's why I give a list of people. So that is another one. And then third is, this leads on to our mid-season elimination competition. So I teased it earlier. It's launched today. We'll put details in the show notes. Same competition we ran last year. It's going to kick off hopefully by week 8, but it depends on whether drafts are done. If not, it might be week 9. And then basically every week, at least one, and then as we get nearer to the end, 2 teams will get eliminated. It's a £5 donation. It is a mandatory minimum donation to our charity page. All the information is in the form in terms of it's played on Sleeper. People that are worried about charity leagues, it's the second year we've done this. The first one, the winner was Martin at Lucky Fantasy Guy. He posted the jersey that he won. So there is proof that we do pay out on prizes. So again, we have a long history of paying out on prizes. There's enough people that will validate that we do that, but appreciate that people now will have a slight more concern due to an individual. And it's not, unfortunately, the first individual that has scammed people in this space. So although it wasn't for personal gain, because that money did go directly to charity, it required a direct charity link. That's the only saving grace in this story, is there was no profit made off this as far as I'm aware. I think it was just I don't know what was going through this person's head to not pay out on the prize, but it's not for me to know. But just to say that we do pay out on prizes. I've made it very clear what the prize scale is when we reach minimum thresholds of people. So if there's 30 people, there's one prize. 40 to 49 people, 2 prizes. 50 plus, there'll be 3 prizes. So, it's very clear. There is a prize sort of scale. And none of the money that's donated goes towards prizes. So, because it's all directed, we only direct you directly to the charity. We don't collect any of that money. So the money comes out of the prizes come out of our pocket. So just FYI. So we do this to raise money for charity, and we pay the price out of our own pocket. So I just that was a long spiel, and I'm sorry, but I think it's really important to be transparent about these sorts of things. And especially as this person did once upon a time have an affiliation to us, I wanted to be really transparent about everything regarding that. But I'm done. Draw a line. It's finished in my book. But I just wanted to be really clear and honest and transparent about it.
There you have it. Perfect stuff. Murph, harking back to your trip to Manchester for your conference gig. What was it? An expo?
It was at the Lowry Theatre. So it was an exhibition for content writers and providers in the higher education space.
Okay, that's niche. It's outside of my comfort zone, if I'm honest. But you did send me a picture of you with the Gruffalo, and I did notice that in that picture with the Gruffalo, your beard was looking on point, and I'm assuming, Murph, that's because you took Handyman from Manscaped with you on your journey to Manchester.
I absolutely did. I used it the day of the conference. Used it that morning. Gave myself a fresh tidy up, so I was ship shape and sharp for the conference. So yes, use the Handyman. Love it. Really, it cuts a lot closer than I actually thought it would. I thought it would leave me with some stubble, but it actually gets rid of all the stubble, which I was quite surprised with. Without that razor burn feeling that you get when you use those automated tools and they get a bit close. So I was really impressed with the Handyman. I've got to admit, it was an excellent tool, and it's not too loud, but it's very powerful, and that's the best thing about it.
Quiet and powerful. There you are, Manscaped. You can use that one. No, absolutely. I will admit I am slightly lazy with my stubble control, so it does occasionally struggle when I get to a week's worth of neck hair and go, no, I need to use the lawnmower to just take it down beforehand, or the hedge trimmer, because we have been blessed to have been provided with either. But I do find that the hedge trimmer is slightly unnecessary when just trimming my neck. It's a hammer to crush an egg, shall we say. So yeah, like the lawnmower gets the neck, and then the Handyman just tidies up for that box fresh feeling. But if you do want to be box fresh, Rush Nation, coming up to Christmas, order yourself or your partner one of these from manscaped.com. Use the code 5yard at checkout for 20% off and free shipping. Go get that box fresh look for the upcoming Christmas parties, Murph. Okay, right. What did you learn about week 6? Come on, intrigue me.
I originally had 3, but then I put an extra one in here. First of all, let's talk about the Tennessee Titans, right? So the Tennessee Titans, they're on bye this week, so a bit of a strange time to talk about them. But this was really shocking. They only ran 46 plays on Sunday, which is just wild. Only 21 of them passes.
What's an average amount of plays for people who don't know how many plays are done on a weekly?
Realistically, a team should be running somewhere around the 55-ish mark as a sort of line in the sand. I'd say 55 is kind of like what you would expect normally. The good offenses,
so we're talking.
Well, the good offenses are running about 65 plus.
Okay, so if you think, I don't know, what's an average touchdown drive? About 8-9 plays, something like that, to go 75 yards a distance from a kickoff return. Yeah. And so you're talking that's almost 3 series of plays that they're not playing against the good teams, if you think they're playing 21 more plays than the Titans did on the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, there's some context to this. So if you have a day where you're hyper efficient where you've got, for example, the Dolphins
Justin Fields.
are, the Dolphins sometimes are a bit hyper efficient and have really short drives, but they seem to, because they seem to generate a lot of drives. They seem to generate a lot of plays, but actually, you get offenses that can be quite efficient with the ball, and therefore don't necessarily have high drive counts or get into a huge lead, and then as a result, kind of things slow down and slow down the time of play, and therefore slow down the amount of plays that they run because they're trying to burn clock. So if you think you're ahead by quite a significant amount, you'll run less plays because actually you're trying to eat clock. You're trying to really slow the game down. You're really trying to, you're taking more time if you think you're 40 second designated clock to run a play. If the clock is running, you'll eat more plays. So there is a bit of context. That's not really necessarily what happened with the Titans here. It's quite a low amount for a team. It's a really low amount for a team. There has to be some context. Don't forget they lost the game. So typically when you find a team that are losing a game and they were trailing for all of that game pretty much, you would expect the offense to go into some form of hurry up offense, especially as they only lost by one score. You would expect the team to run more plays. So the fact they didn't, it shows a couple of things to me. And it's the reason that it kind of surprised me was given the nature of the game. The fact they didn't throw a lot of passes when trailing in the game, pretty much all the way through, that was a shock to me. But then also just the extreme number of plays, considering they're in a negative game script. It says to me that there is some issues. They might get right on the bye week, but it also says to me that they need to. One of the things they're going to need to do coming out of the bye, if they want to contend, is they're going to need to run more plays. They're going to need to think of ways that you can run more plays. Philadelphia, for example, realized that going for it on like 4th and 1, for example, and the brotherly shove and all this malarkey, that's a way that you generate more plays. You sustain longer drives, you generate more plays. Another way you can do it is go no huddle. We saw this in a Super Bowl with Sean McVay, going no huddle to generate more plays. Yes, okay, when they got there, they didn't generate much offense, but they ran a lot of plays. They just came up against a really good defense. There's a few ways that you can generate more plays. The Titans need to think of a way that they can and should do that. That was something that really just sort of shocked me. The second, and this is just absolutely baffling, if you've not watched the last quarter of the Washington Commanders and the Falcons game, I have no idea. I have no idea what is going on with Arthur Smith and the Falcons right now. And it's not because I'm a Bucs fan and find it funny to laugh at the Falcons, although I do. But I'm genuinely mystified as to what they're doing as a team. Like, it genuinely boggles my mind. So, to give you an example, they're down 8. So one score, they need to tie the game with a 2-point conversion. They get it's a second and goal or third and goal. I think it was third and goal. It was a third and goal, needing to go 3 yards, and they don't know what play they're going to run, and they're false start, and you're sitting there like, in the one situation, the game is pretty much on the line here, and you false start. Like, I don't understand how that's possible. Like, surely you know what play you're going to run, and they had no clue, and then that was baffling. So they get the false start. So they go back 5 yards, right? So then you think, surely by now it's third and 8 to go. And surely you think by now they know what they're going to run. They've just taken 40 seconds. Yes, okay, the play difference is down and distance is different. They then nearly false start again. They literally run the clock to the 0. And they're losing, don't forget. They can't really burn clock. They shouldn't be burning clock. They're losing. And then Desmond Ridder, they did not know what play they were running. Desmond Ridder's running around like a headless chicken. He has no idea what he's doing. He lofts the ball in the midair. It gets intercepted. Right? It's absolutely baffling that happens. I don't understand what was going on in that moment, Matt. And then you think, okay, that's really bad. Maybe that's just one series. It all got a bit weird, whatever. They make the stop, the Falcons D, who were very good in this game. They did not deserve to lose this game, the Falcons D. Get the stop. Then they get the ball back, and they have no idea what they're running as an offense. There just is no communication between, and if there is, it's confusing between the quarterback and the coach and the play caller, because you've got offensive linemen not lined up in the right formation. You've got players in motion, unknowing where they're going to go. It just was baffling, like to watch him sitting there. Like Desmond Ridder has absolutely no idea where he's going to put the ball, and people want to sit here and kill Desmond Ridder, and he didn't play particularly well in this game, and he hasn't played that well all season. But this is where I'm going to spring to the defense of Desmond Ridder here. If you watch that last quarter, that's all coaching. Because there's absolutely no way. Desmond Ridder would have been better off ripping the mic out of his helmet or the speaker, whatever it is, and just gone rogue. He would have been better off because there was some breakdown in communication between the coaching staff and Ridder. It was taking him far too long to get the instruction. It was causing confusion in the game, and they had absolutely no idea what they were doing. And it was just it's honestly for a team, for a professional sports team that is coached day in, day out, it was absolutely mind-boggling to watch. That there was just absolutely no clarity as to what was going on. Like, it was baffling. Absolutely baffling. And they only lost the game by 8. And they had 3 possessions to tie the game and failed on all 3. So, it's just shocking. So, I definitely recommend watching that. If you've got DAZN or NFL Plus or whatever, or just go and watch the last quarter of that game and you'll understand what I mean. It is definitely worth watching just to see the breakdown in communication, because that's what people don't see. It's what you don't see in the box score. People will look at that and go, Desmond Ridder was poor. And he wasn't great. I'm not sitting here saying that Desmond Ridder deserves better, but I do think that it is very harsh to punish him solely in this game, because there is a lot of conflicting information. And I would love to hear the honest breakdown in the Falcons facility on Monday or Tuesday, whenever they had this, because I'd love to know what happened, because it is a breakdown that's going live publicly, and it's just baffling to me. So that really shocked me.
They were terrible in London.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like, I think you want to sit here and you want to blame the players on the field. And I think the players on the field deserve some culpability. Do not get me wrong. I'm not sitting here saying that Desmond Ridder has been excellent in spite of everything. Far from it. But I don't think he is being put in an environment to succeed. I genuinely believe that the coaching on that team is horrifically bad. At times. I'm not saying all the time, because they're 3-3. At the end of the day, they've won 3 games this season. You cannot sit here and say that they are the worst coach team in the NFL. But there were just moments in games where it all goes to pot. It just all goes. It just completely goes away. And for me, that defense single-handedly is keeping them in games. That defense is it's a top 5 defense in the league. It is really, really well coached. It's well drilled. The issues are all on the offensive side of the ball. If you remember our conversations a few weeks ago when we talked about Brandon Staley, we were saying, hey, on your side of the ball, if you're the head coach and it's your side of the ball that's the issue, you're not going to last very long. Arthur Smith is an offensive-minded coach. He was originally a tight ends coach, offensive coordinator, now a head coach. But he's an offensive-minded coach. There isn't much wrong with that defensive side of the ball. Yes, it could be better. I think any unit in the league could be better, but ultimately, I think that's a top 5, top 6 defensive unit in the league, or it's very close. It's knocking on the door in that range. I don't think the defense was not the reason this team lost this game. It was purely on the offense. So, for me, if you're the head coach and it's your side of the ball that stinks, you're going to struggle to keep your job at the end of the season. Arthur Smith will struggle to keep his job if they don't win the NFC South. And realistically, that defense should be challenging in the NFC South. And they're not far behind. They're a game and a half or whatever it is. I don't know all the
game and a half.
It's a game or it's half a game. It's because the Bucs have played a game less. So it's like it's 3-2 versus 3-3. So it's maybe not a whole game. It's like 0.75. I don't know how it works. So yeah.
Did the Falcons not have their bye then after the London game?
No,
they didn't. That's unusual.
No. Yeah, it is, but they probably didn't want the early bye, which makes sense. I wouldn't want the early bye. So, yeah, and they won after London, so it did work in their favor. And then they lost last week, so they're 3-3. They win, they lose, they win, they lose, they win, they lose. That's kind of their pattern. And I think there's just some coaching elements. Anyway, that shocked me just to watch that. And I would recommend any football fan to just go and get the last 30 minutes. Well, if you get it on, I would ideally probably look to get it the whole game, but if not, try and watch it in 40 and just see the breakdowns in what I mean there. Let's talk about Washington, right? So they've had a weird amount of praise for their offense this season because of Eric Bieniemy. I think their offense at time is good and their offensive time is not very good. Same game. I thought their offense was efficient. What I like about them is they take risks, which is, I think, is good. It's entertaining. Defense is pretty decent. Not the best defensive unit in this particular game, but they were decent. They picked off Desmond Ridder 3 times. I wouldn't say necessarily that they were all deserving of the result of brilliant defensive play as opposed to just breakdowns, and the offense was responsible for at least one, if not two of those picks. But the one thing that's really interesting with Washington is for the season, Washington at 8%, their passing rate is 8% over expected. So what we mean by that is that in situations where you would expect them to run the ball, i.e. in games that they're winning, they're still heavily passing the ball. Maybe like second and short where you would expect them to run the ball. They're passing the ball. And I point this to the fact that there's two reasons why this is relevant. One, if you're an owner of Antonio Gibson in fantasy football, this really kills him because there's enough of a role for Brian Robinson Jr. There isn't enough role for two of them because they're heavily invested in throwing the football. So when you look at that, it's really fascinating to see that they're throwing the ball a lot more. They trust Sam Howell immensely in this offense to throw the ball. They would rather throw the football. I find that fascinating that they are leaning heavily on the pass. They're the second highest team in the NFL with passing rate over expected. So that is interesting. And then also what's really interesting is you would expect a team that is so heavily invested in the pass to have a lot of fantasy relevant wide receivers or fantasy relevant offense weapons. And they kind of do because you have Terry McLaurin. We'll get into this a little bit later, but you got Terry McLaurin and then you've got Logan Thomas, top 12 tight end. And then you've got Curtis Samuel, who's a top 26, 25 wide receiver, right? So he's in that range, just outside the wide receiver too, but he's kind of there or thereabouts. But weirdly, there's no role for Jahan Dotson. It's just not there. And I said this at the start of the season, like, I don't get all this love for Jahan Dotson that everyone has. This whole irrational love that he is a phenomenal athlete and player. I've never seen it. He had an outrageous touchdown rate last season. I think he caught 7 touchdowns off like 40 reception or 40 targets or something like that. I have to go look up the number, but it was mind-bogglingly like skewed that his touchdown rate was just ridiculous. I think actually, no, it was 7 touchdowns off like 40% of his targets or 40% of his catches, which is just mental. So what's interesting is roles for Brian Robinson Jr., for Terry McLaurin, for Logan Thomas, for Curtis Samuel, no role for Jahan Dotson. In fact, he was practicing today with the special teams unit.
Oh, dear.
Which kind of tells you that, hey, if you're a Jahan Dotson owner, it's time to get out.
35 receptions, Murph. 35 receptions.
Okay, 35 receptions, 7 touchdowns.
Yeah.
That's a ridiculous rate to be scoring touchdowns at. It's never going to happen again. Like, you don't score touchdowns at that kind of rate unless you're in the single digit receptions. So that's what I mean. I never saw. I said at the start of the season when Terry McLaurin went down, I said, I'd rather invest in Curtis Samuel than Jahan Dotson. I think he's the one with the skill set. And actually, I've just written a column for Fantasy Pros. It's not live yet. Look for it in the next day or so. But I've written it, submitted it. That Curtis Samuel's matchup this week is one of the top 3 matchups for me that I would be looking to exploit. So if Curtis Samuel is on your free agency list right now, I'd be picking him up. He's available in over half of leagues. I'd be investing in him. I'd be picking him up. I'll be playing him this week in the flex. Again, he's a top 26 wide receiver right now. 25, I think he is. He's kind of there or thereabouts with Calvin Ridley. This is how good he's sneakily having quite a good season that no one is talking about, and I don't quite understand it. So Jahan Dotson can go away. It's all about Curtis Samuel right now, and he's got a great matchup this week, so exploit that. And then the last one was just, we talked about replacement players last week. We did quite a piece on it. We did a separate podcast and we did this. And we said, go and get replacement level players. Obviously, a lot of things happened in the last week. We saw a lot of injuries, which we won't recap them all because we don't have that much more time. But in terms of what did surprise me was Jordan Mason over Elijah Mitchell. And he was very good. So Jordan Mason is the guy to own in San Francisco, not Elijah Mitchell. So make sure you go and get Jordan Mason where you can. They're the things that sort of surprised me this week.
Except you can't get him because everyone has got on board the crazy injury panic station of the waivers. And yeah.
I don't know. What is his ownership rate? Let's have a look. His ownership rate on Sleeper is not as high as you would think. 43%. So he's available in over half the leagues.
But I don't know how accurate that ownership. I'm not saying the number is incorrect, but of the leagues he's been picked up in, I guess only either teams that are really running back needy or the Christian McCaffrey owner would pick him up. Not necessarily, maybe there's leagues where he just hasn't been picked up because people don't need that depth.
I think if it wasn't a week 7 buy-mageddon, and there's quite a lot of teams on buy, where teams probably don't feel comfortable to pick him up this week because they need the rest of their bench in order to play, and there's players that can't drop, and it's probably quite shallow bench leagues. If Christian McCaffrey, and also Christian McCaffrey is not going to be out that long, he has a chance to play this weekend. If Christian McCaffrey plays this weekend, and obviously the value goes down on Jordan Mason, that's not a bad thing because we know what Christian McCaffrey's like. He does get injured most years. So and most people in the position tend to get injured, right? So it's not a bad thing if Christian McCaffrey comes back because I'd still be picking up Jordan Mason. I'd be looking for players with high. I talked about this literally an hour and a half ago, that I'd be talking about picking up players that have a high ceiling. Rico Dowdle, Jordan Mason. You know, these are the players that for me, we talked about fading Demercado. Ingram is kind of, he's all right, but he's not someone I'm desperate to go out there and own. Jamal Williams is back tonight. He's a player I'm not desperate to go out and own. That New Orleans rushing offense is pretty poor. You know, I'm not convinced that having the backup in New Orleans is something I really want part of because we've seen it. We've seen it this season. Alvin Kamara didn't play for 3 games and all those players were pretty poor. They weren't fantasy relevant. It's the same in New York. Breece Hall, absolutely must own. Behind him, it's a committee. I don't want Dalvin Cook. I don't want Michael Carter. They all cannibalize each other, right? They're going to run a committee. So I'm not interested. The offense isn't good enough to sustain that. So I'm not interested in that. You know, we talked about Ronnie Rivers as someone you should own. Okay, Ronnie Rivers should have been in line for a massive week this week because Kyron Williams got injured and then Ronnie Rivers got injured. So now you've got the Zach Evans audition route. Now this is interesting because let's say Kyron Williams looks like he's going to be out multiple weeks. Ronnie Rivers might be back. Not this week. He's kind of questionable, not likely. But he could be back next week. If Zach Evans does not perform this week to the level, and keep in mind, he's the running back 3 on this roster.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a reason he is behind Ronnie Rivers. Before anyone gets into the whole, oh, well, he's got the seat now, he's got the opportunity. He 100% does. And if he has a great week, he'll hold on to the seat. If he has a poor week, as we saw with Deion Jackson in week 1 with the Deion Jackson versus Zach Moss scenario, guess what's going to happen? Zach Evans is going to go back. Ronnie Rivers is going to be the guy that will be ahead of Zach Evans. So as I said on the waiver wire show, just be a bit cautious with your fab on him. Yes, he's got the great opportunity right now, but he could just as likely fumble that opportunity. And so keep an eye on the player. Like Ronnie Rivers is a player I'd still keep an eye on if you can, because he's the guy who could ascend into that situation in a week's time.
What about Murf, before we move off the Rams then? Darrell Henderson, obviously, he's been activated to the practice squad. If Ronnie Rivers is injured for longer than we think and Zach Evans is just poor, Henderson does know the offense. Is there a chance he sees some work?
Well, no, because they signed Royce Freeman first.
No, that's true.
Like,
Actually, yeah.
that's how little they value Darrell Henderson. Like, let's keep in mind, Darrell Henderson was drafted by the Rams, had the position at the Rams, didn't do very well at the Rams, got cut by the Rams, and didn't get signed by anybody. And now he's back at the Rams. Like, for me, I'm not owning Darrell Henderson. I'm not owning Royce Freeman. I don't care. They don't matter to me. There was a lot of signings this week. People were like, "Oh, let's get excited! Julio Jones is back in the NFL. Like, let's go and buy Julio Jones. He's in Philly. It's going to be amazing." No, you don't need Julio Jones. He's not going to get the ball much. Like, he's not. This isn't peak Julio Jones. I watched him in Tampa a couple of years ago. The guy is pretty much done. He's a useful receiver to have in big situations, but he's not going to get big target volume. He'll get the odd catch here or there. But 165,000 people in the world have added Julio Jones to their roster this week. Mind-boggling. Wow. Mecole Hardman gets traded to Kansas City. So Kansas City let him go and have traded him back for a late pick swap because he's not being used in the Jets offense. Over 500,000 people have added Mecole Hardman to their roster this week. Like, he wasn't fantasy relevant when he was there the first time. He's not going to be fantasy relevant now.
Yeah.
He's not. Just because they traded a late round pick swap. That's basically free. He's basically gone to them back for free.
I am actually starting Mecole Hardman this week in a deep dynasty league because there's no one on the waivers. I've got so many players on bye. I don't want to drop anybody. And I had Mecole Hardman from his Chiefs days. Never got rid of him because it's a deep dynasty league. Okay. And my situation is so bad, I'm actually starting him this week.
Okay. Well, expect him to get 1 fantasy point. That's about the ceiling. So, like,
better than nothing.
I mean, he could get nothing. I just don't understand it. Like, I'm looking at players that are getting added this week, and I'm just like, I don't get how he is getting added so much. Like, I don't get it. I don't get how Mecole Hardman is now rostered in 15% of the leagues. Julio Jones is rostered in 15%. It's like the new shiny thing. Quick, let's get these guys before anyone else does. You're just throwing money into a money pit. Doink. Doink. Yeah. It's literally just, you're just chucking your money away signing these players, and you're chucking a roster spot away. And it's all about, you cannot sign players who have a low ceiling unless there is a really specific reason. You just can't. It's just, you're just chucking it away. There's no point. So, yeah, I'm massively against adding players like that to your roster. I'm massively against having players like Ezekiel Elliott, Dalvin Cook, who are just name legacy players to your roster. They're just roster clogs, and you're going to drop them in a week or two. So just get rid now and try and do something about it. That's kind of what the pod is about earlier. I don't mention that many specific players. The Patreon, I mention a lot more specific players. That's why you should subscribe. But yeah.
That's our weekly PSA right now. Just get rid of your roster cloggers.
It really is. Like, by the way, Darrell Henderson got picked up by 72,500 people this week. He's rostered in 2% of the leagues. He's not even on an active roster. Like, they must be those really deep leagues. Like, I've got one of those leagues where it's like literally anyone that goes on the waiver wire, you just go and add because there's no one ever on the waiver wire. But I mean, like, it's just wild.
Yeah, I think it might be in the red zone in one of our home leagues, Murph. I added him because my running back situation is so bad that if there's someone with even a sniff of a lace somewhere in the NFL, I'm going to add him at that point. But okay, let's talk statistical trends that we're going to monitor. Let's talk about the new Darren Waller in, I almost said Oakland. Let's talk about Las Vegas's tight end, Michael Mayer.
Yeah, so yeah, he's a player I really liked in college. Not a player I have too much exposure to in redraft because I just don't believe in picking up too many rookie tight ends, although Sam Laporta is definitely throwing that theory out to bed. So, but Michael Mayer looks like he might do as well. He's up to 67% of routes run. So the week before, he'd ran 49%, which was a season high. So it's now a season high 67%. He's also posting in the last 2 games 3 yards. I've got my mouth tongue here. So he's posting 3 yards per route run, which is quite a significant amount. It doesn't sound like a lot, but but it really is quite significant. Like a 3 yards per route run in like the field of where he's playing in that tight end position. Because keep in mind that he where he's playing, he's obviously a bit of a safety blanket. The breaking news is that Jimmy Garoppolo is out this week, so they're going to go with, I guess, Brian Hoyer. So I expect Michael Mayer's trend to continue to go up. So yeah, really, really interesting. I would be adding Michael Mayer. I said this earlier, and I said it on the waiver wire. It's probably I'd add him over about everyone but 8 tight ends in the league right now, 8 or 9. I just don't. I don't see, like, for me, I'm looking for a high outcome opportunity at tight end, and I'm just not really seeing that many tight ends producing high outcomes. Like, for me, he's over Cole Kmet. He's over Tyler Higbee. He's over a lot of players for me, just because I see the opportunity that he can produce, and his ceiling. Like, he's better than anybody on your waivers right now by a country mile. If I'm just going to go to the top 12 tight ends this season, for some reason it's not loading, which is great.
Tight ends this season,
yeah. Just there's nothing to see here. Thanks, Sleeper. As always, right there for me in the clutch when I need it most.
So I've got it here now, Murph. Top 12 tight ends. This is just a PPR league. This is the first league on Sleeper. I've got, like you, a bajillion leagues on Sleeper, so the scoring could be slightly skewed, but it is Neil Elliott's standard tournament, so I think it is pretty standard PPR, standard roster spots, and it goes Kelsey, Laporta, Hawkinson, Andrews, Cole Kmet at 5.
Yeah, but he's going to take a decline, so whatever. But yeah, okay.
Yep. Evan
that
Ingram
tells you how
6.
bad it is. Okay.
Yeah, Evan Ingram at 6. Dalton Schultz at 7. George Kittle at 8. Jonnu Smith at 9. Dallas Goedert at 10. Waller at 11. And Kyle Pitts. As if the Falcons have 2 top 12 fantasy relevant tight ends when they are trash.
Yeah, but that says everything. Like, Kyle Pitts, even at 12, is not that good. Like, so Goddard, I'm kind of 50-50 on. You would hope it gets better, but if it doesn't, it doesn't. Jolton Salt's I'm keeping because I talk about him in a bit. But yeah, outside of him, Kittle and everyone else, yeah, these guys can go. Like, you can just get rid of them.
It's mad, like, looking down this list right now, because Jonnu Smith's obviously 9th. He's on the waivers.
But that's not good. That's not sustainable for me.
No.
Or that also tells you how bad it is.
Yeah, but people have still got Gerald Everett, Luke Musgrave, David Njoku, all rostered.
Yeah.
Okonkwo.
So for me, Myers over all those. Players. Okonkwo, if you're still owning Okonkwo, I can't help you. He should have been gone weeks ago. Should have been gone weeks ago.
Let me leave.
Should have been gone weeks ago. Yeah. So anyway, there you go. There's some players to Michael Mayer trending upwards for me. Really like it. I'd be definitely taking a big shot on him, given the tight end position is garbage. Let's talk about JSN, because there's a player I actually talked about would potentially, like, I'm out on for the season because I'm just not seeing enough. But actually, he's up to 81% of routes run, 7.6 ADOT, which are season highs on Sunday against the Bengals. It was also another big shot. He ran downfield. It was wide open. Geno Smith just didn't get the ball to him. So, Pete Gower even openly discussed that particular play in his press conference. So we're seeing a bigger role for JSN than I kind of expected it to be. It's not at the expense of anyone, which is interesting. They just seem to be integrating him a lot more. So I think he's one to watch. I'm not necessarily putting him in the starting lineup yet, but he's definitely seeing an increase in role. So if people have dropped JSN, I think he's about 70% owned. It might be worth a sneaky ad just to see if he does usurp someone there, because it's definitely starting to trend upwards, like he's going to have a relevant role, but he's not quite seeing the results yet, but the results are coming. So I think you might see a decent week out of JSN relatively soon. And they've had the bye. It's another advantage. You don't have a bye week to suffer with him later on. So let's talk about Breece Hall. Oh, go ahead.
No, you were spot on, Murph. 71% ownership on JSN, just off the top of your head. Pretty good.
Yeah, there you go. I think I saw it earlier. I think that's the only reason, and it's stuck in my head. Brees Hall. So right on the bye this week, not much to say, but actually season high in snaps and percentage of routes run. 62% snaps he played, 59% routes he ran on. Got a nice sort of bump in high value targets in the last couple of weeks, so his role is getting bigger and bigger. We're starting to see him sort of decimate the rest of the running back room. They're starting to open the tap up. I think now he's got the bye, we should see a lot more in week 8. So if you've been a bit underwhelmed by Hall's performance, expect there to be a pretty decent uplift after the bye. Let's talk about the Vikings. Obviously, they lost Justin Jefferson. So what we're seeing here is a very narrow attacking tree. So as we said last week, it's Jordan Addison, it's KJ Osborne, and TJ Hawkinson. So basically, Jordan Addison and KJ Osborne both ran 100% routes, so they were on the field the whole time. And then TJ Hawkinson obviously is going to have a large presence. The only other player that got a target in this game from the wide receiver or tight end core was Brandon Powell. So anyone else is just irrelevant in that offense. So, but it's very much centered on Addison and Osborne and Hawkinson right now. Powell, not quite an ad, but he would be the next guy up if something was to happen to Addison or Osborne. So just keep an eye on him. I'm not saying you need to add him, but if you're in a deep league, I would be adding him, definitely. But if you're in a shallow league, he's a player I'd put on a watch list somewhere. Quentin Johnston, I keep talking about him, not a thing. Keep saying he's not a thing, and people keep adding him. I saw him, believe it or not, in waiver wire columns this week. People, and this was granted, this was before Monday Night Football, so they were played on Monday Night Football. Which, by the way, it annoyed me on Monday Night Football when they showed that Chargers woman with the celebration and the crying, clearly a plant from the NFL, right, to generate memes and clicks. But everyone jumped on it. I'm like, talk about the game. Why do we care about a fan? Like, it was just wild. I literally, within 2 hours of that game ending, I must have seen about 100 tweets with that video of that woman. Like, come on now. But anyway, besides the point, I saw Quentin Johnston in a few waiver wire columns and waiver wire videos. Even one of my employers put him in a waiver wire column of a must add this week. Let me tell you, do not do it. So before the bye, which was in week 5, he had 71% routes run. And then on Monday Night Football, he ran 49%. A massive drop. So you think like, oh, after the bye, he's going to come out. It's all going to be Quentin Johnston time. He's not a thing. He's not a thing. Get rid of him off your roster. If he blows up in week 13, so be it. But you are going to have to wait a very long time for him to do anything. When you coming off a bye where they've had an opportunity to work on things, he sees a significant route drop in a game which was fairly close. I'm just saying, it's not a good look. It's not a good look. They were trading in that game. They didn't go to him. It's Josh Palmer. It's Keenan Allen. Quentin Johnston, not a thing. He's not a thing. If you still got him on your rosters, he need to go. I've got no doubt by the end of the season, he will have some role to play. I've got no doubt in it. But unless you are 6-0 or 5-1, you cannot hold him. Because you need the roster spot. Unless you're in a deep league. And by the way, I'm excluding Dynasty in this. It's not a Dynasty conversation. This is a redraft conversation. If you have a 16 bench, you're 4 wins or fewer, you cannot hold Quentin Johnston and hope it comes good. This is where you lose leagues. Yes, he might blow up for the final 4 games of the season. He might be a thing for the final 4 games of the season. He might be great in the fantasy playoffs, but he's not going to get you there. You have to get to the playoffs first before you can worry about the playoffs. If you're 6-0, you're 5-1, or you're 4-2 and you're the top scorer in your league, have at it, hold him. In any other scenario, he need to go because you need the roster spot to get you into the playoffs. So you need to cut him. Craig Reynolds, talked about him. He is the guy to own when Dave Montgomery's out. Dave Montgomery might be out multiple weeks. I would expect him to be out the next 2 weeks because of the bye the week after, in week 9 for the Lions. So he's already been ruled out for this week. I wouldn't expect him back in week 8. I think they're going to let him get healthy. The Lions are first place in the division. They should be okay. Craig Reynolds did a very, very good job standing in against a pretty tough Bucks run defense. He also, I don't know if you saw the Amon-Ra St. Brown touchdown, an amazing block so that Amon-Ra St. Brown scored. That's the sort of thing that gets you on the field constantly. So I know Jamar Gibbs is back. I'm not worried about Jamar Gibbs for Craig Reynolds' sake. If Craig Reynolds is still free in your league, I'd be adding him as much as possible. I think he's got a role for a couple of weeks, and then I think he is the upside play when David Montgomery is out. He's already had a couple of injuries this year now, so there's likelihood that there could be another one later on in the season. I'd be adding Craig Reynolds and having him on as many rosters as I can. He's a reasonably good upside sort of running back to play when David Montgomery's out. So keep an eye on him. We talked about Arizona last week, and I said that Demercado is not really a guy I wanted to own too much of, that I thought Keontae Ingram was going to be the guy. It's pretty much how it transpired. Keontae Ingram was the early down guy. Damian Williams was kind of the sort of 2-minute offense, hurry up drill kind of running back. And then Demercado got a bit in the negative script. But effectively, this is a committee. I wouldn't start any of them. If I had to start one at a push, it would be Ingram because he gets the early work. Demercado, I think, is droppable. Damian Williams, I don't think any of those guys are really going to be the guy until James Conner comes back. I think they're going to run a committee. It's what they kind of showed us last week. So be careful of that. Weekly Puka Nacua update, 29% target share in this game, which is phenomenal. Cooper Kupp had 38%. So it shows you that even when Cooper Kupp is going to dominate the target share, 38%, Nacua is still going to be a thing. Like, he's still going to get a significant role in this offense. So, I said it that I didn't think I was worried about his role. I thought it'd be heavily consolidated. Clearly, the way he's played in the time without Kupp, and he's continued that with Kupp, he's a bona fide wide receiver play every single week until the end of the season. So that's worth pointing out. The other thing I would say is Nacua also had multiple end zone targets. So he is going to get targeted there. So that's a really good sign. If you're a Puka Nacua owner, you're in a good spot there. Kareem Hunt. So he got the first running back touch, which made him the starter. That sent people wild to, let's go and own Kareem Hunt. He's the starter. He's not the starter. It doesn't matter who gets the first touch. The starter is irrelevant in fantasy football, right? It's completely irrelevant who gets the first snap. And I take you back to a time when Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette were in the same team, and Ronald Jones probably started every single game for the Buccaneers their Super Bowl season. Leonard Fournette was the guy to own. The season after in particular. So, doesn't matter who gets the first touch or the start. That just says they're going to carry the ball the first down, right? It's the same as like limited practice is nothing to me. If a player is limited, it means they missed at least one play or one snap, right? But they could have just missed one and they're limited because they technically sat out. So, caution to it. Everyone's sitting there, add Kareem Hunt. He's going to be a thing. Right. He played 37% of snaps. Jerome Ford played 50% of snaps, 49% of snaps. Also, Ford got so much more work. He looked more explosive. He's still the guy to own there. If you want to own Kareem Hunt as a speculative ad, and then if something happens to Jerome Ford, I don't hate the play. If you're picking up Kareem Hunt thinking he's going to usurp Jerome Ford and he's going to be the guy, not going to happen, right? They cut him for Jerome Ford. I said this ages ago. Jerome Ford is the guy to own. If you want to have Kareem Hunt as a speculative, high upside ad, if something happens to Jerome Ford, I don't hate it. I don't hate that play. But don't sit there and stick him in your lineup every week expecting him to get points, because that is where you're going to go downhill. Zach Moss, Jonathan Taylor, much closer in snaps and routes. Both had similar amounts of, in fact, they had the same amount of total touches and high value targets. But I think we're going to start seeing they've got a really tough schedule coming up, the Colts, from a run defense perspective. So I think you're going to see Jonathan Taylor usurp into that role. Do you have any questions or anything to add?
No, I'm soaking it up. I'm just I'm listening and learning. Obviously, does that running back room change with Richardson having season-ending surgery now? Like, does that affect them at all, or does that help them with?
I think it gives them some volume. They have a really horrendous schedule from a running back perspective, one of the worst in the league. So when that happens, talent prevails. So
Yep.
I'm not saying Zach Moss is a bad player, far from it. I was fully on board with adding him and keeping him. But I think when there's going to be limited opportunities for them to run the football, they're not going to roll a 50-50 split. It's going to be, I still think Zach Moss has a role. I still think he can potentially be a thing. But I think ultimately Jonathan Taylor is going to usurp into a majority role when he's fully fit. They paid him. So ultimately they're going to be a little cautious. The only thing I would say with the Anthony Richardson injury is that probably kills. I don't think they were really a playoff team. But I think that injury kills any opportunity of them getting to the playoffs. And there's nothing against Gardner Minshew. He's going to throw the ball. It's going to be much better for fantasy football. But from a results on the field point of view, and I wasn't the biggest Anthony Richardson guy, by the way, but I think even I admit that he gives them a better opportunity to win because of his flexibility than Gardner Minshew. I think it's safe to say that the Jags are going to lock that division up pretty quickly. And I would say that the Colts are not going to make the playoffs. And I don't think I'm being ridiculous in thinking that. So I think what I would say is in that scenario, they might rest at any time that Jonathan Taylor isn't like 90% fit. They might take workload off him and not risk him because they've paid him now. That's the only thing I would say that the Anthony Richardson injury might change. So Zach Moss is still worth owning, but you just got to lower expectations on him.
Sure.
DeAndre Swift had 8 receptions in their loss to the Jets, which is weird they lost to the Jets. He's already had as many receptions this season as any running back for the Eagles in the entire 2022 season, and it's week 6.
That's mad.
That's mad. So DeAndre Swift is a thing. He's a real thing. He's monopolizing that backfield, getting loads of high value touches. He's getting loads of receptions. It's phenomenal. Obviously, if he gets injured, Kenneth Gainwell is the next guy up. Don't worry about anyone else. If you still hold Rashad Penny, you can drop him. He's not a thing. Saquon Barkley, 28 total touches, 78% of snaps. So this whole, he's questionable. We're not sure if he's going to go. Is he going to go? Went down the wire. Oh, we're going to see how he is prior to game. The geezer was healthy. They played the system, right? The Giants played the media. They played the system. You don't get 28 touches if you're just ready to go. Doesn't happen. And I know the Giants are crap. And I know they've got no real offensive threat or outlook. And they didn't have Daniel Jones and all of this malarkey, right? I don't care. The fact is that he was healthy. He was 100% healthy or 95% healthy because you don't get that kind of workload when you're 50, 60% healthy. So this whole game time decision thing was a load of crap. It was a load of crap. I said this in a column for Pro Football Network on the Sunday. I expected him to go. I expected him to have. I did have him as an RB2, a volume-based RB2. I think that's about where he ended up. But ultimately, the Giants lied. There was no way he was game time decision. That's absolute nonsense. So, shame on you, the Giants, right? If I was the GM of the Giants, and that's a long-going joke going back about 6 years or whatever it is now, I wouldn't allow that kind of behavior. I'm just going to tell it out there now. I don't think there's I don't think you can gain a competitive advantage when you're best player and saying, oh, he might not play, he might play. Listen, he's played. I talked about this already. Terry McLaurin. He's absolutely dominating all the play, all the target share in Washington. Curtis Samuel, it just basically bye-bye Jahar Dotson, right? You can hold him if you can afford to hold him, but don't expect the situation to change anytime soon. That offense is running quite well. It's purring quite nicely. with Logan Thomas, with Curtis Samuel, with Terry McLaurin. And as I said, it's not a good sign Jahan Dotson running with a special teams unit today. Like and I wrote the show doc yesterday, so I hadn't even seen that until today. That tells me everything I need to know. Jahan Dotson is. Don't be surprised if he gets traded. By the way, I wanted to get your reaction on this. Jerry Jeudy potentially being a Colt by the end of the window.
It would not surprise me. It would not surprise me because we said it last week. Jerry Jeudy was going to be traded, and we said at the start of the season he's one of the people who the Broncos are looking to trade or talking about trading. I actually think it's for him it's a good move because obviously Pittman's the big X outside guy, and Jeudy can run from the slot as the Y, and then you can put. They got Josh Downs.
Yeah, they got Josh Downs and Alec Pierce.
Well, Josh Downs is clearly their slot guy, and Jeudy can play on the outside, so I don't think it would be the worst move for him going to the Colts.
But I don't get why they do it now. Now they've lost Richardson. I don't get why they do it now.
Was that news before or after Richardson?
Today.
Oh, I hadn't seen it today.
Yeah, literally today.
Yeah, I don't know. Value or monetary wise, maybe there's something there that they need to get done before the deadline. I don't know.
Yeah, I would see that as a strange move now. I get it in the off season, but I don't get it now because I don't think the Colts have got. Maybe they're just thinking we don't want to get into a competitive market in the off season. We can secure it now and get it done. Yeah. That could be as you're saying. That could be the reason.
I guess if he is their guy, it would be prudent for them to go and get him now while it's not a competitive market, like you say. Go and get the guy you actually want rather than have to fight for him later on.
Yeah. Okay.
I would say.
That makes sense. I just wanted to get your opinion on it. I've got quite a few to rattle through stat-wise, so I'm going to rattle through the next few in record speed. Rashee Rice is the guy I want to own in Kansas City. He's back up to 50% of routes, and I think with Justin Watson's injury, he's going to benefit from that and get increased routes. He looked really good last week, so he's the guy I'd want to own going forward. Gus Edwards is kind of the guy in Baltimore. 61% of snaps played, 49% routes run, and he had all the running back touches inside the 10. So it's tough. Like, I don't think there's a lot of love there, but I think he's a flex play. He's definitely the guy to potentially own in that backfield. It kind of swings every couple of weeks, but at the moment, it's definitely Edwards over Hill. Stephon Diggs is just a monster right now. I just put huge dominant target hog. Yeah, I mean, like, he's just a monster.
Stephon Diggs, man.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of like stating the obvious. I guess my point on that, and I put it in here, was just more the fact of, like, if you own Gabe Davis, he is a start-sit decision every single week. It depends on matchup. And they've got some tough matchups coming up. That's kind of why I put this in here, as a PSA that if you own Gabe Davis, he's a start-sit. If you own any other receiver in this offense, you can drop him. That's kind of my point. Juba Hubbard did really well with no Miles Sanders, 76% snap share. He looked good. Didn't get that many high value touches, but he got 20 touches, which is pretty good. I think he did all right. Going to be interesting. There's a lot of talk that he's going to usurp Miles Sanders. I don't see it. So if you know a Miles Sanders owner, I would try and buy low and do that. Dameon Pierce is clearly, there's something going on with Dameon Pierce. There's something clearly going on. I don't know if he's hurt. I don't know if people aren't disclosing it. He only ran 23% of routes. Devin Singletary hit 50% of routes run. I don't understand it. I don't know what's going on there, but there's something going on. They're on a bye this week. Could be a one-off, but there is definitely, if Dameon Pierce isn't getting the receiving work and they're a pass-first offense and they don't really run the ball that much, Dameon Pierce is like a fade. So it's like, and he was drafted reasonably high. You were drafting him to be a starter stasher running back 3.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to be a little careful here. This is not a good sign, a good trend for Dameon Pierce. So if you're a Dameon Pierce owner, you should be a little bit. I've got quite a bit of him. I'm a bit worried about it right now. He's on bye this week, so we'll punt it another week. We'll see what happens. Drake London, 26% target share. So they pass the ball a lot more, Atlanta. When they do, that's good news for Drake London. So fingers crossed that Arthur Smith gets his act together and they realize that, hey, we've got really good receiving weapons. We've got Bijan Robinson. We've got Drake London. We've got 2 tight ends. Why Jonnu Smith is a thing, I don't understand. Anyway, but they have weapons. They just traded for Van Jefferson for some weird reason. Good luck to them. Let's hope that continues for Drake London. Alexander Mattison is just basically he's blown Cam Akers out of the water. Cam Akers is not a thing. You can drop Cam Akers. This was a 22-2 touch. Alexander Mattison 22 touches. Cam Akers 2. Cam Akers not a thing. He can go.
No.
If he's on your roster, cut bait. You're only holding him because you drafted him high. He can go. You can cut him. He's not worth anything anymore. No one's going to trade you for him. He's not going to have a high value role if Alexander Mattison gets injured because that's not really a run first offense. It's still not a run. I mean, yes, it was great. Alexander Mattison had 22 touches. Hey, guess what? He was not great. He had minus 21 rushing yards over expected. I mean, like these are the sorts of numbers we see out of Tampa Bay backs. But Alexander Mattison is right up there in terms of one of the worst backs in the league in terms of rushing yards over expected. Negative 21. That is not good. He ran 21 yards less than he should have done. That's ultimately what that is telling you. So he's not good. He's not been good all season. That rushing attack has not been good all season. I don't want too many pieces of it. I don't have any Alexander Mattison in all my many leagues. I don't have one bit of Alexander Mattison. I'm quite happy with that. Ultimately, Cam Akers, not a thing. If he cannot usurp Alexander Mattison, who is minus 21 rushing yards over expected on a performance, he ain't ever getting a chance. And even when he does, it's not going to be good. So get rid of Cam Akers. He can go. Bye-bye. Get rid. Cut loose. Do what you got to do. He's got to go. Kenneth Walker, 74% snap share, season high. He has basically blown Zach Charbonnet out of the water. Zach Charbonnet is a hold because that role is quite valuable. And Kenneth Walker did get injured last year, but you're holding him and unfortunately in the hopes of an injury. I kind of thought that would be a committee by the end of the season. Doesn't trend that way at all. So definitely one that we kind of expected to happen. That's not going to happen. Dalton Schultz in his last 2 games, 17 targets, 11 receptions, in his last 2 games. In his previous 4 games, he had 17 targets and 10 receptions. So he's getting a lot more work. And that's at the expense of Robert Woods, who fades completely the other way. Robert Woods is now cuttable in leagues. All that work is going to Dalton Schultz. So you can get rid of him. Alvin Kamara had an 80% snap share, which is a season high. 23 receptions in his 3 games.
That's
11 of them was on his return, or 13 or whatever it was. So yeah, strong reception usage. This is what I mean. Jamal Williams, everyone else behind, like everyone's like, oh, Jamal Williams is back tonight. I don't care. Not a thing. Not a thing. It's always Alvin Kamara there, so that's fine. Jalen Waddle had 99 air yards. Season high. He'd have had more, but they pulled him because they were so far ahead of Carolina. So that was good. One player I want to talk about is Trey Palmer of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He had 154 air yards. So he is the deep threat, especially as I think Mike Evans is still struggling a tiny bit with that hamstring. I don't think it's bad. Like he played a lot. But Trey Palmer is potentially a thing. He's someone that if you're in a deep league, he's a deep stash. I would stash him. He's going to be very much a boom or bust. He is a deep threat, but he's the sort of guy that could have like a 3 for 135 a 1/2 day. Like that's the sort of stat line you're going to get out of him. He's a bit like a Shaheed from New Orleans. He's kind of going to be this boom or bust play. He's either going to score big points or he's not going to score at all. But he does get in the box. He has scored a touchdown this season. I think he's got 2 touchdowns this season. He is very, very good at the contested catch. He's not a big player, but he's very, very good at contested catches. And he's done really well to work his way into this offense. So either if something happens to Mike Evans or if this team gets more vertical, which I think it will do, Trey Palmer is a bit of a sneaky add in a deep league. I'm not adding him in a 5 or 6 bench league, but definitely if you've got the bench spaces or in Dynasty, you've got the spaces to burn, Trey Palmer is a thing. I would add him. Adam Thielen had 8 catches in the first half. A-Dot was good. A-Dot was up to 9.2, so things look really good. So yeah, I'm really happy with what he's doing. Colts. So the Gardner Minshew thing. So we talked about tempo. It's nice that we're going to end pretty much with play tempo because that's kind of where we started with the Titans, right? Gardner Minshew makes them play more plays. Ultimately, it's the same way we talked about this a few weeks ago with Andy Dalton. They passed the ball a lot more. They have more plays. When you get a quarterback that's played quite a bit, they know how to get the tempo up. And Gardner Minshew is definitely getting that tempo up for the Colts, which means more plays. They're going to have more touches, more high value touches. Things are all going to trend upwards as a fantasy offense. So Josh Downs is a thing. If they trade for Jerry Jeudy, he'll be a thing. Michael Pittman's going to be a thing. You know, Jonathan Taylor will be a thing. These are all good. This is the one thing with Anthony Richardson's injury is everyone gets a slight boost because they'll run more plays. There will be more plays for this offense to eat on, which is good. The Broncos only had 22 pass attempts when they lost, which I don't understand. Like, you've got Russell Wilson. You traded for Russell Wilson. You bring in Sean Payton. And I don't like Sean Payton, but he is a good offensive coach. And they throw the ball 22 times? I don't know what's going on, man. For me, I'm fading the whole offense.
Just fade Denver as an organization.
Yeah, I think you've got to. I think you've got to fade the whole lot. I don't think there's anyone there. Cortland Sutton was for me the last hope. But you've got a running back committee which is 3 wide, which no one is getting anything out of. Because Jaleel McLaughlin is now succeeded Samaje Perine, who still gets touches. So that is a 3-way committee of running backs. No one's getting anything of value there. Russell Wilson's throwing the ball 22 times. That's not going to get you any points. And then you've got the offense, like the tight end situation's murky with Adam Troutman and Greg Dulcich. And then you've got the wide receivers. Jerry Jeudy's not getting any work. And then Cortland Sutton's kind of getting some work. But Cortland Sutton is a touchdown or bust play. That's it. That's all you've got in this offense. So that you can't really go with any of them. Dolphins are awesome right now on offense. So 16 high value touches as a team, which is just mental. They're just awesome, putting up loads of points. You got to have as many pieces of that. We talked about Jeff Wilson last week. You had to add him. Trey McBride is pretty much almost on par with Zach Ertz. We talked about this last week. Zach Ertz fallen 52%. Trey McBride 48%. I would still get Michael Mayer, but Trey McBride is sort of ascending upwards, which is good. By the way, Chase Claypool, now he's gone. Tyler Scott was the next man up in Chicago. I think where it was there. 64% routes in place of Chase Claypool. So it could be that Tyler Scott could be the next back or the next wide receiver to own behind DJ Moore, but their schedule's pretty bad. I wouldn't, but if he's going to run 62% routes and goes up to 70-80% of routes, we might have to keep an eye on Tyler Scott. If you're in a super deep league, like in one of those really stupid leagues that, like I mentioned earlier, where no one ever comes up on the waiver wire because everyone's gone, Tyler Scott will probably be free. I'm like to think he's probably 0% owned. I'm going to look it up now. But if you're looking for a player that's 0% owned, let's see what he is. Tyler Scott. He's got to be close to 0. Tyler Scott is 0% owned. We did it, folks. We found a player 0% owned. Tyler Scott, if you're in a super, stupid deep league, you might as well add Tyler Scott because he might be a thing. I doubt it. I highly doubt it. But hey, this is what this show is. You want to find a super deep sleeper that might come out of nowhere? Tyler Scott could potentially be that one. I didn't give Trey Palmer's ownership. I reckon, and I don't know this, I reckon it's around 5%. 2%. And he's gone up 1% this week. So there you go. We've given you a 2% sleeper and a 0% sleeper. You're welcome.
Oh, you're welcome. Every time somebody says you're welcome, I just get Moana in my head. Just the Rock singing "You're welcome." It's the curse of having a small child and Disney Plus. But
nailed it.
Yeah, that was good. Matt, I have a question. It's on nothing you've just talked about. Not that I wasn't listening, but a dynasty question. What's your thoughts on trading super late? I say late, super future picks for a player. So a 25 and a 26 first for CD Lamb. That sort of trade.
Are you contending?
It's not me. I haven't done it. A contending team has traded for Lamb and given up the 25 and 26 first to a team that is absolutely gutting their team of players, but they're doing it with picks that are 25 and 26 as opposed to many 24s. So essentially, for the next 2 years, they're not really going to have a competing team. They're just going to have a squad of old people and waiver wire ads in a really deep dynasty league. So they're going to be essentially a free win every week.
Yeah, okay. I don't hate it, and yeah, I think it's fine. Like, I think if you believe you're in a win now window over the next 2 years, I don't hate it. Obviously, you have to win, because if you don't win the next 2 years, you've got no firsts to rebuild with for the following 2 years. So I think that's fine to swallow if you're going to win.
To be fair, he did win it last year.
Okay.
He has got a really good team. It was more from the side of the other team selling somebody for picks that are well in advance.
Oh, got you. Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't do it. I would try and get sooner picks, and I think a player like CD Lamb, I don't think you couldn't have got a 24 and a 25 first.
No.
Having said that, it is an offense that's not great at the moment. You need another change there. Look, I don't hate it because you're acquiring future wealth, but I would have, if you're in that tank mode, you want to get 2024 firsts, ultimately. But if that was the best offer on the table, and that might have been the best offer, it might be the team that took him didn't have a 2024 first. And it was actually, well, I'm going to get 2 firsts over a first and a second. And actually, I would much rather have 2 firsts than a first and a second, even if that second might have been sooner. So if it was like a 2024 second, 2025 first, I'd rather take the 25 and 26 first. Yes, it's into the future, but you've got, in Dynasty, realistically, you're only looking at every single draft class, like 10 or 12 relatively good to decent fantasy prospects, and everyone else outside that's a gamble, and you're really at a low percentage shot. Even in the second round, it's a very low percentage to try and get there. So at least that way he's got multiple firsts in each year, so he has the option. He has a lot more options to him where he could trade up to get a superstar. He might be able to go from like 3 to 1 and get the best player in the draft and trade the other first, or whatever. You give yourself options, or you could trade that future first. Like, it gets to 25, he might be able to trade that 26 first to get up in the draft or to get another player, whatever he wants to do. So I always like having the first because it gives you options. So if that was the best offer, I'd rather have had the 24 and a 25. But if that was the best offer on the table, I would rather take the 25 and 26 first over a 24 second and a 25th first. So
yeah,
I just think that gives you more options to deal in the future, or to acquire better players. But it is a long way. It does mean that if your situation doesn't change, your 2024 outlook is going to be just as rough as your 2023 outlook. So you're investing in like a 3 to 4 year plan, which I don't love from a dynasty perspective. I get people that want to do it, but I stick to this principle of, I don't know if my league is going to be going in 4 years.
Yeah.
So I always try and rebuild within 2 or push all in.
Yeah.
Because I just think I don't want, like, and maybe this is why I'm a slightly different fantasy player to everybody else in Dynasty. I just don't believe that my fantasy league is going to live for 4 years, unless it's like a home league and you've been playing in it for 10 years and it's got that provability that it's going to last. I'm just super cynical. That's just me. I'm just a very cynical person. I just think the world and everybody's world changes every few years. And I just think that look at all the Dynasty leagues that started in the pandemic. How many of them have folded? I don't know what the number is. I'm going to guess it's over 30%. And I think I'm conservative there.
I think for me, my main concern with the trade was that because it's only a 10-team, it's a super deep 10-team league, and this guy is blowing his team up for future picks. It's going to get to the point where he's basically a free win for every team every week because he's future bought so much. And I just think if there's playoff implications because of that, or he wants to then leave, somebody else leaves the league, and then somebody comes in and they haven't got any picks, or I just think it. For instance, he messaged. I got Tyler Algier, and he messaged me saying any interest in trading him, and offered me 2 third-round picks. Running backs. I mean, the running backs are stupid value, but I said, well, I tell you what, you give me a 24-second, which, because his team is so bad, is essentially the 201, and I'll walk away with that happy, because Algier is not going to get in my side, really, because of Bijan. He's a handcuff, and he's just counted it with a 2026 second. So I'm not going to take a second for 2026 for Algier now. It just doesn't make sense.
No. I think I get your point. Ultimately, if the bigger worry isn't the fact that this guy's a free win every week in the league. I think that happens. I think in Dynasty you have to let that happen. The bigger worry I would have, especially if it's a free league, is that this guy leaves, and then finding someone to take this team on and play with it in 2024. If there's not a lot of 2024 rebuild value, you have to be a really kind of special person to take that on. And you got the 25 and the 26 firsts, but you're basically saying, hey, you're going to have a really crap year, and you have to kind of be a special kind of person to take that on.
I just wanted to get your opinion on it.
I don't love it, but I think ultimately, at least the person is trying to do something about winning, and that's, I think, where you've got to try and give the owner the benefit of the doubt. Yes, they're blowing up their team, but at least he's getting firsts. If he was blowing it up for thirds and fourths, that would really concern me. That would be like, okay, this guy's just a joker. He's just a joke. But if the guy's getting first, and yes, they're quite a bit in the future, at least that says to me he's trying to win. On the back of it, 2 firsts for CeeDee Lamb, I get there in the future. It's not a bad offer. That's not, I mean, it's not a bad offer. That is a reasonable offer. It's not stupid. And I get that if that was the best offer on the table, I get why you would take it. But I also think that you get owners that kind of, they might be quite new to Dynasty and think about this like 5-year grandeur plan. I'm going to dominate in 5 years. I have this cautionary tale that your league might not be around in 5 years. And I am cynical. I get it. But just most Dynasty leagues don't make 5 years. They just don't. So I think you just got to be a little careful. I just think you kind of have to have this balance of, you have to let it happen, but you also have to make sure this guy's going to commit at least until 2025. Because if he doesn't...
Also, 2 firsts for CeeDee Lamb also prices out Jamar Chase and JJ Jefferson, because at that point, you're not going to want to sell for less than that, or even that, and people aren't going to want to give you 3 firsts.
Well, they're both better. They're both better than CeeDee Lamb right now. They're both better than CeeDee Lamb right now, and they're both in a better offense. Here's a question that's just come in, and it's lucky because we're just about to wrap up. In Superflex, would you always play an average QB starter like Minshew over a running back wide receiver 3, such as Rashad Wright or Josh Downs?
Scoring has to be scoring.
I would probably always lean. I probably always lean yes. I think there's a line of demarcation. I would say Minshew, because the passing volume, would get the nod over White and Downs for me. I would say the line of demarcation is probably round about north of Baker Mayfield. QB 20, QB 2020, QB 20, QB 21 is kind of where I'd have to start looking at it on a situation by situation basis. And I think Minshew's kind of around that range. So I would still lean Minshew, I think, because of the passing volume. Yeah, I think I'm just going to pull up. Do you know what? I'm going to give you the line now. It moves every week within reason, but I'll give you a rough line. Because Geno Smith is like QB 23 right now in overall, and I've definitely played Geno Smith there, and he's had the toughest schedule, or one of the toughest schedules. Right, I'm just going to go into scoring. So right. It's a weird one because you got like Desmond Ridder at QB 17 because he's had 2 really good weeks in the last 2 weeks. Josh Dobbs at 18 because of his rushing. Prescott at 19. So Baker's at 20 and he's at a bye. So that's interesting. But you got Burrow at 22, Smith at 23. Garoppolo's got a really good schedule coming up at 24, although he's out this week. And Derek Carr I would play. So I would say, okay, the line is Derek Carr and below. So I'd play Derek Carr. I wouldn't play Wilson. I wouldn't play Jones. I wouldn't play Bryce Young. At this point, I wouldn't play Daniel Jones. He's out anyway, I think. I wouldn't play Kenny Pickett. I wouldn't play Ryan Tannehill. Deshaun Watson is QB 32, but he's missed 2 games and then the bye. But I would play over. I would play over those players. I think Minshew's kind of got a up and down. He's QB 33 because his high week is 13 points. But I think it will get better. 12.6 points because he threw interceptions. I think it will get better the more time he has. It's a new offense for him. So I feel okay because of the passing volume. So I would say like I'm not playing like Tyson Badgett or Aiden O'Connell or Brian Hoyer. And I'm not playing Tannehill, Pickett, Jones, Young, Mac Jones, or Daniel Jones at the moment, Zach Wilson. But everyone else, Baker Mayfield, touch and go, depends on the matchup for me. He's got the Falcons, so that's maybe not one I'm too married to, but everyone else I would definitely be playing in that slot.
There you go. Ask your question right until the end, and Murph shall answer. That's just how we do it at 5 Yard. Right, Rush Nation, let's wrap this up. Head over to Manscaped, use the code 5Yard for 20% off and free shipping. Follow Murph on X at Murph_NFL. Follow the podcast at 5 Yard Rush. Head over to Patreon for £1 a month. You can subscribe to the Patreon cast. There's a whole load of information. There's a WhatsApp group. It's £1 a month. How many weeks is it? It's like £10 for the rest of the season, basically. A bit more, but we can.
No, it's not even that. For the rest of the season, it's like £4.
Well, there you go.
It's. I think you got to pay VAT. So. Because we don't get, not that we get the VAT. So I think it's like maybe £1.20 a month with the VAT. So you're basically paying like a £5 for the rest of the season.
£5 rest of season. Get involved, Rush Nation. It's been a while. My voice is going, as you could probably hear. I'm getting husky. It's been a pleasure. Murph, catch you down the road, big man. Enjoy the rest of your week. I know you're off next week, so do enjoy, but I will chat to you anyway. Rush Nation, this is going to do it for this week's show. Enjoy week 7. Plenty of football still to go. Until next week, Rush Nation, don't forget, keep rushing.